So it's cool. It's wonderful to have Emily here. Um, I just want to say a few words in setting the stage. We started 26 years ago with just a vague notion, whatever that notion was. It's a long time ago. Along the way, one of the things we found is it was really cool and wonderful to work with people who were uh, in the land, growing plants, distilling hydrosols, pressing oils. And in a complementary manner to, Evan's sensitivity and intuition and deep skill set around skin and touch and how plants would work with the skin. There was a sort of complementary vibe that these land stewards are the coolest people. And for most of you, of course, many, I know many of you, and those I don't know, welcome. Um, is the connection to soil is ultimately, the connecting soil health to skin health. And admiring and respecting and honoring those who are on the land um, really has taken hold over many, many years. In the last, year or so, we've been talking about the stewards and having a steward circle and what it means to be a steward and how everybody, feels this impulse to honor stewards and recognize them and the hard work that they do, uh, often the modest pay that's received. But in discussions, and we had some discussions in the middle of August, a farm gathering, where we brought some of the land stewards together with some retailers like Emily. And, our discussions, took place in Morning Mist Botanicals in Washington State, fondly near the Canadian border, where our hopes were still high that the Blue Jays might prevail. And in part of those discussions, we realized that we're all stewards in one way or another. And particularly, depending where you are in your journey, retailers are often stewards of, cultivating, culturing what brands, what information is shared with the public. And we've enjoyed a long relationship with Emily's family and Cambridge Naturals, probably going back to the early 2000s. And over the course of times, we've had a few conversations, and the one I shared in the invite, I just wanted to read because it's one it's one that touches my heart and perhaps my age more than most of you guys. But when I asked what inspired her parents to open the store, she shared, and I don't remember if this was in the conversation or perhaps out of an interview many years ago. As young people, my parents were active in the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War protests. They started to connect the dots between the food that we put in our bodies and the way it's grown, especially in the US, and how that connects to our whole system, including our political system and social system. And so we returned to this thread with Emily as part that overlaps with discussions that I've had at other farm gatherings with, what happened to the original spark of the 60s. So I want to, start by, asking Emily, do you see that spark in amongst the people that you engage with in your store? And if not, what is your impression of why?
A great question, David, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be connected to Evan Healy in this way. You didn't pay me to say that. That's genuine. I think that it is alive in many ways, and one of the reasons I think it has not been, or it is more challenging right now, is because we are all so distracted, by technology, by the state of the world, by life, by all the various pieces. And when my parents talk about that era, I think there was just more human to human connection happening in person. There were more social events in person. There was more, it was perhaps easier to focus than it is now. And to kind of also pick your battles. And right now it feels a bit like everything is a battle. And so it's hard to pay attention to one thing because it leads into everything else. So I think a lot of people are feeling that same level of energy or urgency that perhaps people felt in the 1960s. I think that 60s, 70s energy did fade over time. And I remember, growing up as a child of the 90s, it felt kind of like, I mean, it was probably pretty naive at the time, but everything's great. We're moving in the right direction. Things are looking up, end of history, right? Wasn't that the line at the time? Which proved to be completely incorrect. And I think that we have sort of collectively woken up to the need for progress, the need to move things forward, the need for a better, saner, healthier world for all of us. And I think the biggest challenge right now is just figuring out where to focus our energy because time is limited, our energy is limited, our attention is limited. And I see that amongst my peer group, my friends. I see that within our customer base. I see that in the industry. I think we could have such a powerful collective voice, if we um, stood up more for things like regenerative farming. But yeah, everyone's distracted.
Hmm. Um, what responsibility do you feel towards your parents' original vision?
I feel a great sense of responsibility, and it's something I've grappled with a lot over the years of running this business. So I little backstory, my parents started the store in 1974. They were 23 years old, if you're not familiar with our store. And they were very young, they were young, they were idealistic. They put so much of their heart and soul into this business over the 40 plus years that they ran it by themselves. And when I moved back to the Boston area in 2014 to help them eventually transition out, and it was a sort of gradual um, uh, uh, takeover, hostile takeover that they agreed to, as my husband likes to say. Um, they were very mindful to not ever make me feel like I had to maintain their legacy or do things exactly the way they had done it. But I am very conscious of the fact that it is a very meaningful business to a lot of people. I am constantly sort of surprised and humbled by the number of customers who come up to me or come up to a staff person and say how much the store means to them, how it has been like a beacon of hope for them or a place that they came to for respite in a difficult time, or we gave them a solution that turned out to be life-changing for them, and how much that means to them. And some of our customers have been shopping for 50 years. So I am very conscious of that. And I have, been grateful to have been given permission by my parents to sort of change and evolve the business over time. And they've also been so open. I mean, I knew this growing up through the course of my life, but like how many times they've had to change their understanding of what it is in order to survive in business. Again, a little bit of history. We started out as a full line grocery store in the era before the big box chain grocery store really existed. And certainly the chain natural food store didn't exist. And over time, suddenly there were big box stores everywhere, including we have 6 Whole Foods in a 3 mile radius of us, as well as tons of other competition, as well as online. And in the late 90s, they decided to shift the model over to more of like a holistic apothecary and mostly get rid of the perishable foods. We used to have a juice bar, we used to cut our own cheeses, all we used to have a huge bulk food section. That all went away. And a lot of customers had a very emotional response to that. That was very challenging, I think, for my parents to go through, but they did it with a lot of courage, and it turned out to be the thing that ultimately saved the business because they were in an urban area, no parking, only on-street parking, um, limited space, and customers were going to like the big Whole Foods, 2 miles down the road with the giant parking lot. So focusing on this model where they could really speak to health and well-being with each customer individually and pick out solutions for them was the thing that saved the business. And over time, we've evolved and evolved and evolved. They moved the business from one location to another. And so not getting too stuck in what it was has been a key to our success. That being said, there is a through line of intentionality and of mission and purpose that has carried through, and that I feel very committed to maintaining over time.
When we were chatting, I think maybe it was after the farm gathering. I think that one of the things that we were talking about is the ability or the willingness to stay in the zone of doing what was right.
Mhm.
And without trying to define what was right, I know that that struck a chord with you. Tell me a little bit about what it is that is right in your mind, and what are the things that you're doing, and how you struggle, how it challenges.
Yeah, that's a big question, and it's a very fine needle to thread that I often struggle with. I mean, I often have conversations, Caleb and I, my husband and I often have deep conversations about this. I often have conversations on our leadership team about this. And, I have my own very personal definition of what, social and environmental justice and equality and equity mean to me. And then I have a business to run and maintain, which exists within, a very winner takes all capitalist system, and is, confined and defined by the system and the parameters in which it exists. And so we're always trying to do our best to, be a mission-based business, be a business that cares about people, planet, purpose, equally, and gives back to our local community, pays fair wages, provides excellent benefits, attends to the needs of our staff in thoughtful ways, and at the same time maintains, a necessarily profitable business, because, we are not venture backed. We are not uh, going to survive if we don't maintain a profit or if we don't have a profit most years. And so that is that very challenging balance that we are constantly navigating. And of course, our society is unequal, and the people who come to work with us come from many different backgrounds, from many different perspectives, from many different life experiences that mean showing up in the world is challenging for them right now. And so we're always trying to be as mindful of that as possible, while again, trying to serve the collective good as best we can. And at the same time, focus on these bigger picture issues that are really important to our business, like, regenerative agriculture, like organics. And often people will say things like throwaway lines about, is organic even that much more nutritious and whatever. And I always think like, are you connecting this back to the people who are growing this food, who have to be handling these pesticides? Because if your values, which I know are aligned with farm worker justice, actually connect back to, the chemicals and the runoff, like, then yes, organic is incredibly important, but we're so sort of like in our own bubbles, like, does this apple have more nutritional benefit for me? I think that's actually sort of besides the point, or not the main point. It's, what is the whole system that this apple is a part of? And I'm as much a hypocrite as the next person. I have an iPhone, it's grown with, or grown, I wish it's manufactured using, rare minerals that are not sustainably harvested. Drive a car to work often. There's so many things I do within my daily life that are not wholly aligned with my best values. But at the same time, I am constantly grappling with the system that we operate within and trying to do the best we can within that system. And it's a daily challenge. It's something I grapple with daily and stay up late at night thinking about how to do better. And so, yeah, that's another piece of my parents' legacy, is that sort of agonizing over every decision that I've carried forward, for better or for worse.
I have a couple of other thoughts, but I'd like to open it up. I don't know whether folks are putting th questions into the chat or could, or just want to, speak up. I know there are a number of people here who know Emily and know the brand well and know these discussions.
Emily, I'd love to pick up on the question. We talked a little bit about, we touched on regenerative agriculture here, and it's kind of a theme that we're exploring within Evan Healy, and it's something that we're working on. We call it our regenerative journey, and it's an exploration, and it's iterative, and it's something we're learning with. And I was wondering, what parts of, like, how would you characterize your own engagement with a regenerative journey, and how and why do you think it's important at this time, given all that context you were just sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been conscious of the term regenerative for probably at least a decade, if not more. I don't remember when it kind of came into the mainstream, but not just through this business, but through previous work that I've done in food equity and other spaces. I've been sort of familiar with this idea of returning carbon to the soil and various movements to help create more biodiversity and all of that. So even before maybe regenerative was the term, I was sort of in those spaces. But you know, in my business, we have touched upon it very little outside of engaging with products that are regeneratively or contain regeneratively grown ingredients. And as far as customers go, it's constantly a opportunity to educate, because most customers have no idea what regenerative means. If they've heard it, it's in a very limited capacity. And it's just maybe sort of like they think of it as a marketing buzzword, and I'm sure there are companies using the term regenerative in um, perhaps not actually the most honest ways. And so we've been trying to communicate about certified regenerative and what that means and sort of the rigor that goes into it more. But I do often feel like I'm sort of like um, a lone, not a beacon, but just like a lone, person trying to sort of like beat this drum of regenerative in our space, because it's not the most important term to our customers at this moment. I don't know if that answers your question, Andy, but
It's an interesting comment because the idea that you are doing something that's important to you that may not resonate with your customers.
that is that is like the story of our business.
And is it the story of those who are carrying the torch of truth and what's important, because are not the truth tellers early adopters, and hence are we not in a position of having the responsibility to share what's important, and to a group that is less aware and hence perhaps distracted and creates that tension and challenge.
Yeah, I think so. I think I have many flaws and opportunities for growth, but one area I think I am skilled in, or at least it's something, a part of me that I feel like I grow more deeply attached to over time. It's the ability to think in systems and to kind of see the whole system, not always perfectly, but um, not, kind of narrow in on a particular focus point and sort of myopically look at that, but actually see sort of all the various pieces and how they link together. And I remember this was years and years ago, but a friend said something to me like, I don't have time to think about like environmental issues. I'm too focused on like social justice issues. And I was just like, what? Like these are inextricably linked, like they're the environmental justice issues directly correlate to social justice issues, to people's health and well-being in their local communities. Our restoration of the soil and our ability to create um, better, healthier soil, better, more nutritious foods, less runoff, less pollution is inextricably linked to people's health and well-being in ways, again, that go beyond sort of the end consumer product. The end consumer product is a critical way that we tell that story. It is how you get people's attention. And so I think one thing that I've come to terms with is like, I run a retail business. A retail business in many ways is um, not people's romantic idea of like what a day-to-day job looks like. It can be very grueling at times. It often involves like picking boxes up, putting products on shelves, dusting the shelves, cleaning the bathrooms, like all kinds of things that are not, and just much like farm work, like people romanticize farm work, and it is often not very romantic. Sometimes it is, um, but it is the retail platform is how I take this thing that's very important to me and part of a system that I see as, connected to these bigger picture issues that I'm really passionate about and believe are, ultimately really important for our planet and people. It's how I communicate that message. It's my opportunity to share that story. And so it's something I've taken very seriously over time and, continually try to get back to whenever I feel sort of discouraged or disillusioned by the day to day, or like, what new responsibility is tasked on us, or what new competition is coming into play, or what sort of like mundane day-to-day issue I'm dealing with. It's like, what's important here, and how do I get back to that, and how do I remember that's a critical piece of why I do what I do. Um, so yeah.
You've been doing it for over a decade. And does that question that does that ever has that ever really, overwhelmed you? Or is it always it's there and then you know your center and you come back to your mission?
I would say that there's a ladybug up there.
It's a
I
message.
don't know.
There's
It's a
hope.
message.
It's hope.
That's really interesting. Uh, I would say that it's actually kind of the opposite. Like, I think that when I have become most overwhelmed and disillusioned, it's because I feel less connected to our mission, or I've forgotten it. Um, I never have like um illusions of grandeur, like I'm going to change the world. Maybe I had that in my 20s or 30s, but I don't have that now. Like I see myself as one tiny node, but in a greater system that, again, can have a ripple effect. When I get disillusioned, it's in sort of like the frustrating, mundane, day-to-day realities of running a small business, and like the things that we must contend with in order to keep our business going and, appease all the various parties. Um, that's when I start to become really sort of like overwhelmed and disillusioned. When I think about what matters to me, like when I connect with brands like Evan Healy on like the trip that we did, that's where I feel like, oh right, this is why. And that fuels me. That keeps me going, and that allows me to get back to work, frankly.
Yeah, cool. Others, comments, questions? Jess Massey, our host. Rob Doser, our forever wise.
Hi, Rob.
Hey Emily, it's really nice to hear from you. I don't think I exactly have a question. What you're making me think about is that, when I sign on with brands, I want brands to be something that's bringing a new, thought to the table, thought to the conversation. And in part, it's because I feel like that is the way that we stay ahead of Target, Costco, whatever. And so I guess, again, I don't know if it's a question as much, but maybe the question is like, how much do you think that is part of, engaging in these conversations? And I know that you're, this thought leader outside of Cambridge, you're part of Infra or blah, 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 you have a broader reach than, Cambridge. Yeah, like how much of it is being fed by this need to sort of stay ahead of the curve, and regen is certainly, I'd like to think that's part of that.
Yeah, I think we're always, I was part of this group with a brand, with Mega Food actually, and they did these sort of like roundtable discussions years ago, and we were invited to be included, and there were a couple of people from Amazon there, and or they were actually part of a company that helped brands get on Amazon or something like that. And, it was sort of like looking at them across the room, like, ooh, there are, they're the big bad competition. And, we're just like the little underdog. And the way they spoke about all of us, because there were several independent retailers there, the way they spoke about all of us is like, you guys are um, you're the tastemakers. You're the people who bring new brands to the marketplace and give them a platform. Like we look to you, like you're the cool kids. And, I'm paraphrasing, but it was honestly eye-opening for me. And it kind of shifted that thinking for me to be like, you know what? I have to stop thinking about these guys as sort of our competition. Of course they are, and it's infuriating at times. But actually, we just have to keep innovating. We have to keep doing what we do better and more intentionally. And if these brands that we have created a platform for, amongst many other retailers, but like often we're the first location for a new brand, and we give them this opportunity, and we put a lot of resources behind it ourselves, and we really champion them. And then, 2 or 3 years later, they're like, see ya, we're going either direct to consumer or we're going into mass market. And so we just have to say, okay, and move on to the next, and of course, that's not true of amazing legacy brands like Evan Healy. We also really value those long-term partnerships with brands that have stayed really true to their values, and those sustain us as well. But just as a business, we have to be sort of thinking about what's next, what's interesting, what's coming down the pipeline, and how do we stay ahead of the curve rather than be sort of swept up by it or behind the curve. And so, yeah, regenerative agriculture, I think it is part of that, but I actually think we're creating the market right now for it. I still think consumers have no idea what we're talking about by and large, the average customer. And so it's still up to us to be that educator about regenerative, and again, sort of keep championing it until it becomes so much more recognizable.
And is it something that you encourage or somehow support your team getting engaged in that conversation while they're on the floor with consumers? Like to
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, specific to regenerative, I can't think of like an exact example of when we've had a training just solely on regenerative, but obviously the brands that we work with who are passionate about it will speak about it. And one thing we do that is somewhat unique is just how much time we pour into employee education, like
Mm.
hours and hours and hours. You know, every single week we have trainings. We put as many people as we can into the training, um, regardless of sort of like how um, financially sound
Mhm.
that is, you know, in a retail world. Um, but it's so important to us, it's so important to our customers that we have an educated staff. And so that has been a huge focus of our business model since before I moved back, but I think we've doubled down on that.
Anne, you had a question?
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, your hand is just up.
Oh, sorry.
Hi,
Zoom.
I'm Drew. I don't know if I have a question. I think maybe a statement. I don't know. I've been so grateful to be able to, one, join this conversation, but also be a part of other communities and organizations that are promoting regenerative farming, justice, and equality within these spaces. So I think as an individual who is always wanting to like learn more and grow in my knowledge of like agriculture and like and how to care for ourselves and be more independent, because I feel like society has kind of made us dependent on products and people and all of these things. And so with regenerative farming, I think it creates an opportunity for people to grow their own food, to kind of know what it's like to eat, to know where your food comes from. So I think as someone who's had to search so hard to try and find this, what are some ways or ideas that this can become more accessible, where people can learn more about why regenerative farming is better than traditional farming that we've had for so long? Because I want to learn more. I've been learning about regenerative farming for a very long time. I actually went to Indonesia in 2019, and they didn't call it regenerative farming. They called it eco. I forgot biodiverse farming or something like that. And also they're doing it in Ghana as well as Brazil. So like other countries, they're living this way. Like that's how a lot of their food is produced. So I feel like America is kind of trying to catch up in a way, and spreading this knowledge. So I'm just curious if anyone has any ideas of like how we can make this information a little bit more accessible and mainstream.
David.
It's a great question. I loved when I was listening to Emily and have chatted with her certainly in the last few months. Been heartened that there's that recognition that we're not going to change the world as an individual, and that the forces seem insurmountable. Amazon, Cambridge, Evan Healy, Estee Lauder. It just seems insurmountable. And yet, there is no other choice but to do what you believe. And when you do that, and you look around, I don't know where that expression, 1,000 points of light, comes from. I'm sure I must have heard it, so it must be presumably familiar. But we're one of the 1,000 points of light.
Mm-hmm.
And we were meeting with the folks at Kiss the Ground. And they came in here the other day, and he seemed very knowledgeable. He said 4% of customers know what regenerative is. Sounded very impressive.
That's actually higher than I would have thought. So.
And the point, he was, is even if it's a small amount, it's still a ripple. And what I think, in response to Drew's question is we're all part of it. We're all doing something. It's bigger than regenerative for me. Regenerative is a term, a description, a qualification, a certification that talks about, being mindful with soil and how you treat the soil and how that connects to, carbon and the environment and quality of food and health. So all those things are fantastic. Even bigger than regenerative is our hearts and souls and the way we go about our life and what we're doing and the way we carry ourselves into the world. And that, I think, is what brings, our community together. And I also would say that it's, so heartening and impressive to hear, when Emily is describing what she's doing, it's transparent in her description that she's doing what she's doing because she cares. And she's living a life that reflects what she says. And what she does is what she says. And that's always been something that I would aspire to, and it's always something that I've admired, and it's something I think we all admire in you, Emily, is that you're doing and living what you aspire to and what you talk about. And of course, within all our imperfections, which are they're all fine. So in terms of Drew's question, I hope I answered it. We're all doing that work. And in terms of who Emily is and the value and the quality that she brings to the conversation and to our community and to her community in the world, it's why do we have the Circle of Stewardship? Why do we aspire and want to bring everyone together? Because we are the ones that are part of those 1,000 points of light here, there, and far beyond, reaching into Ghana and other countries around the world, which gives validation to what we're doing.
Well said, David.
Did you have a comment, Lauren, or ghost hands up?
No, I just wanted, David, that was awesome. And Emily, I just wanted to thank you for holding that torch forward and educating the consumers about the importance of regenerative agriculture. It's really important. I work on the supply chain. And so I work with a lot directly with farmers, regenerative farmers, USDA farmers, non-certified farmers, and wildland stewards. And I just wanted to throw out a comment that it takes a lot of work to be a regenerative farmer. And we also just need to, and I know you do, but give props and put any farmer on a pedestal these days, because it's really hard to just be out there in the land every day and doing what they do, whether it's food or botanicals or your wild collecting, because as we all see in the news every day, it's declining because of so many reasons. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that it seems like there's a pretty large retail audience in the group, and any farmer is really important right now, and especially the regenerative ag people. And Drew, to point you in the direction of educational resources. 5 years ago, I didn't really know much about the US agriculture system. So I just went to the website and read the website, the USDA organic certification, and I just kind of started there. But it's actually really interesting to read about the steps that a farmer has to take just to get their organic certification, and then they have to get their regen. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks for letting me speak.
No, that's really well said, Lauren, and thank you for pointing that out in the conversation. And yeah, to be clear, although I think it applies too to any product we carry as well. You know, my concern with regenerative being used by, you know, folks who aren't certified is more about sort of like the big brands that are co-opting the term and using it without any real meaning behind it, not necessarily about specific farmers or farm workers or like that piece of it, but that is a really important point. And, you know, we've certainly like, we work with coffee brands that do direct trade, and they've had products that aren't organic, but they've told us the story behind the brand and how, you know, this product is actually grown using all of the organic practices, but it's just simply not economically viable for that farm to become certified organic. And so again, that's part of that education piece that we're constantly having to do with our customers about why these products, you know, matter, because they are connected directly to a farm that is being paid above the fair wage, and you know, and they are doing their best to grow in, you know, the best way possible. And so yeah, we're constantly doing that education as well, even when it's not like a certified product or doesn't have you know, that USDA logo on it. But yeah, that's a very important point. So well, yeah, well taken.
Lisa, I think you had your hand up.
Yes. Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I just wanted to chime in about that question of how to make this more accessible to people. Just the more that John was talking and Emily and everyone's contributions. I'm in Atlanta and I work with Evan Healy with a small aesthetics practice. And then I work on 2 local organic farms. I've done that for a few years and volunteer and just make sure to have my hands in the dirt and be connected. And I also work as an intuitive healer through my practice and through some other businesses. And I remember, like, it feels like eons ago at this point, when I was first exposed to Evan Healy through Whole Foods. And I kind of decided, like, way back when, okay, when I have my own practice, I'm working with them. And I just remember talking to a representative of the company about Evan's foundation when she was living in Europe and very closely connected with biodynamic farming, and Dr. Hauschka and all of his biodynamic traditions that they then kind of changed over the years. And I also am a student of biodynamic farming. And so there's that element, if someone's unfamiliar with your connection with the land, is always a communication with the animals, with all of the elements, and with the entire cosmos. And so I think it is really important, while I think it's beautiful to hear that everyone thinks that they're, you know, just this small contribution to what is going on in the planet, or not having like grandiosity in what you are thinking that you're doing. But one thing that I've learned over the years is that communication process, whether it's you being open and receptive and kind of creating a channel for yourself to communicate better with the land, to be more connected to the land, you connect better to yourself, to other beings. I think that when you're utilizing that intuitive ability and asking those questions, you can get very clear answers and actually see or have insight and foresight of what it's doing and where it's going, instead of just feeling like, okay, well, you have to do something, and you have to live that and every day show up to that to the fullest of your ability, or constantly question how you can become more part of the conversation. But I have found, and I have this conversations like these about how, you know, with Evan Healy in particular, Evan sees all of these products as a communication with these plants, as a communication with the earth. And I do think and kind of feel like I'm like a showpiece to my clients, because I really believe this with the fullness of my being, just like Emily was saying that a lot, where maybe people like the idea of everything sounds really good, but if you like to actually get people to go on a farm or to take a step further is like kind of out of the question. But I guess that it never really bothered me, because I am connecting into that wisdom that is available to everyone. And as time has gone on, I am making more connections to like create groups of people, like meditation groups and things like that, or even just this group with us here, is by getting the people together who believe this the most, you're creating the power of your energy to make an even larger ripple effect. But I just kind of want to, and it may not, the way that I'm communicating this might not like resonate with everyone, but I do think that, and again, like with Evan, we talk about this all the time, that there's intelligence in nature and within your own body. But if you're not asking, then you won't receive those answers. And so I think that that question about how you can make an even larger impact, you could probably be getting a lot of really clear answers by connecting in like intentionally more with people like us, and maybe even creating something yourself, or maybe even just with one other person, to like create a little more space to go a little deeper inside yourself. Or just, for me, it's frequently just going outside. It doesn't have to be on the farm. We have so many rivers here, and just the movement of the river gets more ideas flowing and stirring in me. And then I know, and it fuels me to do greater things with more confidence. And so I tend to not feel overwhelmed in my contribution, or like really even care about competition or how I am perceived in what I'm doing. So I just thought I would say that it's a little bit of a rogue comment, but I do feel like it is relevant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to butt in really quick, Lisa, because that kind of answered what I was saying. Like, thank you for your share, because I think in my work and my efforts of trying to educate more people about how important it is to know about regenerative farming, I find myself in spaces where people don't really have access to time. And kind of like what we were saying before, they don't have access to time or money or even like places to go. Like, for instance, I volunteer a lot at the Compton Community Garden, where actually Compton is a food desert and it's illegal to grow like plant medicine for some strange reason. So it's like, I want people to get into the land. I love that we have this small little plot of land that we can go to and be in the soil and practice. But I feel sometimes frustrated because yes, I am just one person, but some of these people they don't have they have to work all the time, so they can't come and volunteer at the times that we are open and available, or their housing is not stable, so they're not able to take food home with them because they don't have a place to make it. Or even like the way that people live, they can't even plant, like for instance, I'm grateful I have fruit and vegetables and herbs growing on my balcony because I have access to that. But I think with all that I have, I want to be more intentional with like how I use my resources to help educate and support people that maybe right now don't have the resources, but maybe they can start to develop the knowledge of how to use these spaces, so that eventually they can like put themselves in the mindset of like, oh, okay, well, if I do these things, then I can have the time to be able to access a garden or to go to a farm and to get a tour and to learn about regenerative farming. So I think like those people in those communities really struggle because they're not connected to nature, they're not connected to themselves, and mostly their environment is not really supportive in like finding those things. So I find myself sometimes like feeling defeated and frustrated because the communities that I'm in, they're like, lacking in so much that I am just at this point trying to at least like start to bridge the gap between just knowledge.
I mean, I live in a very affluent area, and at the farms, we donate our excess to these communities that you're talking about. And even then, I think they throw away a lot of the food because it's not part of their culture, maybe, and they don't want to use. Like, to me, I find it funny that the people who are the most affluent have like actually a lot less interest. So, yeah, there's a different side to that too. But I think in here, like in your heart space, there is a wisdom when you're connecting more with the land that you can be strengthened by that energy, that intelligence. There is so much there. Like I'm just thinking about the clays that we use, and they're from these ancient seabeds, and it's like for millions of years there's the bones of animals that have died, and trees and rocks and floods and all of these things, and all of that is in this little jar of clay. And so Evan has like a 30-day practice where you wear the mask for like 30 days. At the end of this, she's like, every time I do it, something about me has changed, and things can open up within you in those subtle levels if you just ask and just connect and intend. It can be so powerful, so that you don't have to doubt yourself that way. But you'll probably still doubt yourself, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I think what I heard is really it's the intention that you put forward and carrying yourself and recognizing your responsibility to be a steward, whether it's a product you're choosing or information that you're sharing with a friend. It doesn't always have to be how can you change these bigger things, but how can you change one conversation? And I think customers really experience that going into Emily's store. It's one conversation at a time and impacting people's lives in a really meaningful way. And it doesn't have to be, a big change to make big ripple effects. We are getting close to the hour, so I did want to just thank Emily so much and kind of kick the conversation back to David and Emily really quick for any closing thoughts. We've got a lot of thank yous, Emily, in the chat for you giving of your time with us today. But I will give you the floor, David, for any last.
No, yeah, it's fantastic. Emily, you're what I said earlier, you're a steward. You walk the talk. You're a beacon of light. Thank you for, sharing and being here and doing the work you do.
Thank you so much, David. And it really is, again, you didn't pay me to say this, but it's brands like Evan Healy that do give me that hope and bring me back to that sense of purpose, and also remind me that, you're doing what you're doing with a business in the same system I operate within, in the same industry, in the same, like requirements for competition and putting yourself out there, and you're still putting this level of intentionality into what you do every day. And that's an inspiration to me. And I love, the conversation that just happened earlier. I think, again, yes, as Jessica said, it's exactly what's happening in our aisles. It's our customers talking to each other about the products, and that ripple effect can be so powerful. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful to be a part of it. Grateful to be a part of this conversation with you all, and thanks for having me.
And to everybody, this concept that we're all stewards certainly is evident in the conversation that Lisa and Drew brought into it, as well as others, is that we're all in it together. So thank you guys for joining us on our journey of stewardship and the regenerative journey. It's just delighted to have you all here, and we continue the journey. We'll see you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.